All right, welcome in. And we're talking with longtime anchor, 30 years here at KLFY, Chuck Huebner. Chuck, thanks so much for some time today.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess we start at the beginning, kind of the when you first got here. What was it like here, and just kind of who were you working with, and kind of take me through your initial thoughts of when you first got to KLFY.
Okay. I started here in 1984. I had done 2 years in radio in New Iberia as a news director at an AM/FM station, and that's how I came to the attention of the folks here at 10, was I would contribute stories to the AP Wire that would have my name on it. And so Gary Arnold was instrumental in helping me get the word out around here. And I was actually hired by Jim Baronet, who's no longer with the organization, but he was the vice president of news at the time. And the organization was just outstanding. We had, I don't know what your staffing is now, but back when I got hired on, we had 2 reporters sharing every desk. And so there were like 12 or 14 of us when you included the special programs that we did on weekends and things like that. And so it was always a very high energy newsroom. It was always very challenging to get your stories on the air, because obviously you had to do a better job of impressing the morning producer as far as what you had in terms of content than the other reporters, because it wasn't easy. I mean, with 12 people, not everybody's stuff gets on every day, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a really competitive environment, but I loved it. Looking back, I think one of the things that makes our organization unique was the fact that Baronet hired just locals. We didn't recruit from colleges in other parts of the country. Everybody that was working at the station, to my knowledge, when I signed on, were all local people who had experience in radio or newspaper. And as a result, I think we went 10 years without anybody leaving the station.
Wow,
which is unheard of in this industry, right?
Right, that doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that's the kind of stability we had.
Wow.
So it was awesome. It was an awesome experience, and we were on top of everything. I mean, we had some great reporters. I would have compared our product with stations just about anywhere in the country. I mean, we were knocking on all cylinders.
Yeah, one of the things that I always was impressed with in talking with you guys about just the way things were done. And you had actually told me that story about the 2 reporters at every desk.
Yeah.
That's something that has changed. What are some things that over the years, obviously, you know, the technology evolves.
Yeah.
So you start with what, video? I'm assuming you guys shot video.
Yeah,
correct? Film.
Yeah,
you shot film.
Actually, when I signed on, they had just moved to video.
Okay.
Yeah, but we still had manual typewriters with the paper and the carbon.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, for people who are not familiar with teleprompters, but the copy appears right there on the screen, all right? But back in the day, it wasn't electronic, it was paper. And so they would have to take these paper scripts that we would type, and they would rip off a copy, and they would actually tape them together and put it on a roller. And sometimes what would happen is the tape would get caught, and the copy would just like that on the screen.
Flutter.
Yeah, but it was cool times, man.
But like, so the technology-wise, I mean, just amazing to see. You go from a big film to a big 3/4-inch tape deck that you got to carry out there.
Yeah, those things were huge, man. You had to be pretty stout to be able to handle one of those.
Right.
I remember Kerry Davis. He went ahead and was out covering flooding one day, and he took a wrong step, and he went right down into a drainage ditch with the recorder and the camera.
Yeah.
But they were big. There was like a bigger than a carry-on, which you would have at an airport.
A briefcase.
And a cable that connected to the camera.
Yeah, the umbilical cord.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm old enough to remember
there you
that,
go.
actually. Shot many football games with an umbilical cord in a tape deck, So it goes from just kind of that to see the way the technology has changed. I mean, obviously, by the time you had kind of wrapped up here, what, 2016? You said?
Yeah.
So when you wrap up, I mean, we're talking about, you know, digital, almost digital has taken over,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So what would you say is kind of the biggest advancement change that you saw, and do you think it benefited the industry or the station here?
Well, when I signed on in '84, no story was too far to go to. You know, they'd hop you in a car. I covered Iberia, St. Mary, and St. Martin.
Okay.
Okay, and I was out there every day, and that's a lot of mileage, you know. Yeah. And over time, I think the stations decided that they didn't want to spend that kind of money on transportation anymore, and so the area that we would cover became smaller. But I mean, the quality of the work was still there. It was just technological changes. Like, for example, we used to have cameramen that were on call 24 hours in the event of an accident or something like that. Yeah. And if they got a call in the middle of the night, they would drive to wherever that was. It could have been an hour and a half down the road, but it was important for us to get video of what had happened, you know, whether it was a crime scene or whether it was an automobile accident. And I saw over the years that, once again, I guess it was kind of a cost-saving deal. They just decided that it wasn't worthwhile to do that, and it was easier to go ahead and produce a graphic inside the control room that shows the location rather than actually go out there. Yeah. But technological advances, yeah, I mean, it's made the industry so much easier. I remember covering the riots in Oakdale when the foreigners went ahead and burned down half the prison there. They had just come out with the new laptop recorders, editors
yep.
that the network boys had.
Right.
And it was just unbelievable. I mean, the speed that the industry moved in after that was just unbelievable.
Yeah. You said no story was too far to cover. In this station, I've worked at probably 5 different stations. When I came to this station, I was astonished at what the lengths they would go to cover. With Dee and Maria, they would tell, if there was a story that happened in a different state, no problem sending a reporter and a camera guy to go cover that and give us our own local angle. What's the furthest you went to cover a story that, you know, wasn't local?
Vietnam.
Yeah, and what was the story
that you guys were going to cover? The president of the Vietnam Veterans Association was a Lafayette attorney at the time. Okay. And there wasn't much cooperation taking place between the American government and the Vietnamese government in terms of resolving the MIA issue. And so Jim Brzee is his name. Jim came up with the idea of talking veteran to veteran, bypassing the governments of the two countries, and reaching out to the Vietnamese veterans with whatever information we had about where their soldiers were buried, and in hopes that they would reciprocate. And so when we made the trip over there in '94, we had information on the whereabouts of several hundred Vietnamese troops that they couldn't have ever located, because we would always win whatever encounter was out there, and then at the end we would police the battlefield, and that involved, you know, burying the dead. Right. But you know, because the Vietnamese were no longer in the area, they had no idea where they were. So we went over with maps and information, and it had a really big impact. The Vietnamese veterans were pretty cool initially, obviously, but once they saw that we were really sincere. And I think they also had an opportunity to look at us differently than when they saw us the last time.
Yeah, I mean, and that experience, I mean, that's not something that happens in a market this size usually. No. So that just shows to me, and it did before I signed on to come here in 2002, the dedication that this company had to bringing good journalism, no matter the size of the station.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't matter how far it was. For example, we covered all 3 of Edwin Edwards' trials when he was, you know, being hounded by the U.S. government, and we staffed that all the time.
Yes.
And that was 3 trials over what, 2 years?
I covered.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, and then I remember Kelly Ward, who I was fortunate enough to anchor with for a brief period of time. She was covering the legislature, and just to give you an idea of the dedication that they had back then, she was covering the legislature, and they were talking about the abortion issue, which was really huge at that time.
Sure.
They had picketers outside abortion clinics and things like that. When her days off came up, she refused to take them. She worked right through her days off for, I don't know, 2 weeks, covering that issue from the beginning until the end, because it was her area and it was important for her to be the one that brought that information to the viewers.
Yeah.
You know,
that dedication is rare. Rare now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But times change.
But it wasn't back then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, kind of that work ethic is instilled in people who are like that. Yeah. Absolutely. So you've had a lot of experiences. Does anything stick out? Obviously, Vietnam was one of the big ones for you. Is there anything else that sticks out in your mind that you're like, man, I just remember this event that I got to cover? I mean, this job affords you a lot of great opportunity. I mean, speaking personally, like covering the Super Bowl for the Saints was the highlight of my career.
Yeah.
Is there something like that besides Vietnam that you can think of?
Well, I got to cover a couple of the presidents when they were in Louisiana, so that was cool. I got to work on a couple of murder cases that were really important to me, because it felt like law enforcement had basically reached a dead end, and so we were contacted by the families on a couple of occasions and were able to get in there and kind of re-energize the investigation. And the one that comes to mind right off the top of my head was the disappearance of Charmaine Latterade, who was a young woman in Franklin who had been out night clubbing and disappeared, never made it home. And the suspect had long been the last guy seen with her, which is usually how it works.
Right. Sure.
But it took law enforcement a couple of years to bring him around.
Yeah. And that's not a huge national story, but that's something that affected you. And a lot of times that's the stories that stick with you, are those stories that maybe don't catch everybody's eye, but man, you just get invested in something.
Yeah, and another one that comes to mind was Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
And seeing the devastation there. We got word through some people that there was a mother and father-in-law that were trapped outside New Orleans, and that they had no way out. And so we actually went along on the drive to get them out. And every time that we would hit a roadblock where it would look like they weren't going to let us go any further, my cameraman and I, we'd jump out with the microphone of, they're just trying to get to their family, what's going on, right? And so the roadblock would open back up, and we'd be able to go ahead and make progress. But yeah, that's the same town where, I don't know if you remember or not, but where all the people in the nursing home passed away.
Yeah.
They didn't evacuate the nursing home, and
right.
Yeah, that was a tough story.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are a bunch of stories that hit home for different reasons, and I can feel that as being a reporter, a sports guy, back to now to being a news anchor, you have those stories that kind of stick with you.
I do have a humorous story. Well, some people may not find it humorous, but the most unusual story I think I ever covered was a guy who called me and said that he and his wife were divorcing, and I said, well, that's not exactly news. And he said, but it will be when you hear what we're doing with the house. And I said, well, what are you doing with the house? He said, we're splitting it. And I said, yeah, you guys, you sell it and you take, no, we're splitting it. He actually got a house moving company to come out and cut the house in half.
Wow.
And she took half and he took the other half.
No joke.
It was crazy, and she was out there that day. She wasn't thrilled that we were there. She kept trying to sick the family dog on us, but he kept waving it off. So,
wow.
But that was pretty.
That's a memorable story.
That's pretty kooky.
Yeah, good stuff there. Obviously, you've worked with a ton of people. some of the people that you learned from, and then maybe some of the you influenced me, because when I started here, I was a news reporter.
Don't blame me.
I'm not blaming you. I understand. It's all Chuck's fault that I'm in news.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
No. But seriously though, I started in 2002 as a news reporter. Maria hired me as a news reporter, and I did that for 2 years. And so it would be I'd come to you to get advice on stories and things of that nature. So you're one of those guys for me.
Well, I appreciate that.
And then there has to be somebody along the way for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim Barronay, he was. He led this news organization at a time when we went after Father Gilbert Goethe.
Oh, yes.
Who was a pedophile priest. In fact, I think we were the first news organization in the country to tackle that issue. And it was a really difficult story to do, because on one side you have the victims who are rightfully entitled to justice, and on the other side you have the Catholic Church, which is, sacrosanct down here, right? And so, I mean, we lost sales accounts. We had people threatened. It was a tough story to cover. But Jim Barronay did that along with Dee Stanley, and Dee also did some other great investigative work through the years. I would say Barronay was probably the one that I learned the most from.
Okay.
In terms of, he would always come up. He had a way of correcting you that didn't take you down, it built you up. Right. So, it might start out as a butt-chewing session, but at the end of the conversation, you felt better about you and the organization than you'd felt before. You were ready to go out and, kick butt and take names.
Right,
so I would say probably Jim Barronay was the gentleman that I looked to the most for advice in those early days.
Yeah, sure. As we kind of roll up and wrap this up, tell me a little bit, is there a piece of advice that you got at some point during your career that benefited you and you pass along, or maybe something that you notice and you're like, I wouldn't do that? Is there that nugget of information over 70 years that kind of evolved?
I would say just, for those who are coming into the business or contemplating it, if it's something you really enjoy doing, you never work a day in your life. And that's how I feel. I mean, I'd have done this job for free, Now the truth can be told.
But, they're like, restitution from Chuck.
Yeah. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just a nugget of information, of
advice
that you might have
gotten. The fact that you can learn something every day in this business, okay? Because the stories are always different. The people are different. You have an opportunity not only to learn through hearing, but if you keep your eyes open, you can also catch a lot of stories like this. And I can't tell you how many times we would be out in one of the parishes driving around, and we'd be headed for story A, and we would see something over here that turned out to be an even bigger story than story A, Yeah. So, just the ability to stay plugged in when you're on the job, and to be vigilant, and because I think at the end of the day, at the end of a career, you look back and you think to yourself, I learned a lot, I had a great time, and I'd like to think at some level I made a difference.
Good stuff. We can end it there, unless you got something else.
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Chuck, thanks so much for coming in, man.
You bet.
Appreciate you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Good to see you.
Yep, you too.
All right.
All right. There you go. Chuck Huebner, legend.